Hi. This is going to be quite different, but I think we all going to the same place. כל הנערות הולכים אל הים. The Jewish nation is ancient, as ancient as the Torah and as ancient as Jewish collective memory is. But while nations could be ancient, the idea that the entire world should be governed by nation states is rather a new one. There was much that was possible and even self-evident before the rise of modern nationalism that now may seem impossible. We have, for example, plenty of historical record written in Arabic, Turkish, Hebrew, that demonstrate that Jews and Muslims, alongside other practitioners of other traditions, were pilgrimaging to the same sacred sites in the Middle East. One such place, for example, was Aaron's tomb in Petra, in Jordan. A 14th century Jew who pilgrimaged to this ancient tomb wrote about it that many people are coming to prostrate here, and the non-Jews are preserving this place in great purity for the honor of the prophet, may he rest in peace. And they honor the Jews as well and allow them to enter and prostrate. And they themselves are praying there, the Muslims. He concludes this description in a prayer, may it be that God will hear their prayers, the Muslim prayers, and our prayers. And this is not an extraordinary case. The modern nation state, however, brings with it a fundamentally different paradigm, the impossible aspiration for having one nation in its one motherland, this binding together of territory, of sovereignty, and of peoplehood, right, in one place. This is the paradigm of the nation state. In times of turmoil and conflict, this underlying belief and dream rise to the surface, and it almost automatically translated into practices of separation, such as apartheid and erasure of different kinds. Lacking other cultural resources for meaning-making and coping with crisis, what we see now unfolding in Israel-Palestine was entirely foreseeable, and many of us foresee it. The nation-state seemed to have an almost hypnotic power over us. It promises us security and freedom. What are you talking about, right? And present itself as the ultimate carrier of our culture, tradition, and religion. I believe that our inability to distinguish ourselves from the state, in this case Israel, and its mode of thinking accounts for much of the horrors we are seeing right now. I'm not trying to say that there were no human-inflicted horrors before modern nationalism. Yet in our time, we are all pushed to be complicit with these politics and violence. We are pushed to incorporate our bodies, our minds, our hearts, to even feel in a certain ways about what is unfolding. Our Jewishness is also absorbed into these projects. In religious Zionist circles, establishing settlements in the West Bank is now considered a mitzvah, a fulfillment of the heavily debated mitzvah commandment of Yishuv Haaretz, right? Mitzvah Yishuv Haaretz. And so is, weird as it will be, bombarding Gaza. Rav Shach, one of the past greatest leaders of the Haredi world, of the ultra-Orthodox world in Israel, raised his voice against his tendencies back in the 70s and 80s. He identified the religious Zionist discourse around mitzvah Yishuv Haaretz, this commandment to settle the land, as a pseudo-halachic discourse that presents itself as religious while adopting entirely the secular national ideology. This was also his point in his discussion about the peace talks with Egypt. We should do whatever we can, he said, and give up on whatever needed to get to peace, because halachically, there is nothing that stands in the way of sustaining life, of pikuach nefesh. He dismissed the counter-arguments of the religious Zionist rabbis as nothing but national ideologies in disgust of halachic discourse. Rav Shach's opinion on military recruitment also manifests his ability to think outside of the paradigm of the nation-state. Rav Shach insisted that the decision of going to war, to put oneself in such a state of radical risk, and the decision to take other people's lives could not be taken lightly. Unfortunately, we know that governments decide on going to wars or fail to end these wars as quickly as possible, not only for security reasons, but for political and even personal reasons as well. Let me read to you from the words he said after the First Lebanon War in 1982 that are still resonating these days. We see that even great Torah scholars, he says, rabbis and righteous people are treating what happened here at the 1982 war with Lebanon as if it was a war of obligation, milchemet mitzvah, But is this truly a war of obligation? The decision to go to war was made based on a vote in the Knesset. And that vote was based on intrigues and agreements between one man and another. You say this, and I will support you if you say this and that. You take care of me, and I will take care of you. He says in Talmudic parlance, Shmor li ve'shmor lecha. They had this kind of negotiation until they reached these outcomes and made the decision to go to war. It seemed satisfactory to them. But if the intrigues had led them to the opposite results, then the voting would have been different, and a different decision would have been reached. Can we rely on such decisions, says Rav Shach? Can such personal consideration guide the path of the people and determine the fate of people's life? This is just too arbitrary. This is a powerful example that the Jewish tradition can indeed provide us with an alternative vantage point from which we can examine our states critically. While the ethos of opposing army service famously persisted in the Haredi and the Orthodox community in Israel, it is hard to find any resonance to the words one of its most important leaders uttered just a few decades ago. Even the Haredi community underwent a process of Israelization that dismantled, unfortunately, their ability to raise ethical questions about Israel's policies and decisions. We need to stand firm for the ability of our tradition to be spoken of and be thought of in a way that is not corrupted by our political institutions. Not because we do not want to see Judaism in the public sphere. The opposite. We want to see it there as a critical, demanding, and inspiring voice that is not enslaved and weaponized by our states. We must allow our Jewish tradition to become the spiritual and cultural resource for a much more expansive ethical and political imagination and for otherwise modes of engaging critically with our political reality.